Yo, good afternoon and welcome. Man, where's the share the music with me? I don't feel the same intro when I don't hear the music playing, Jordan.
Yeah, this is weird. I'm used to doing shows with, a professional producer like Neil, and now we're down here with no music.
It was weird, right? You're used to hearing that music, you know?
Yeah.
Lead you in, get you hyped up. No audio. No audio sharing here, but why don't you try it again? Run it back. Try it again. Yep. I don't hear a thing. No. I don't think we can do the show, honestly.
Really throwing off my rhythm.
All right. Yeah, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Stochastic.com MLB. I guess live before lock. That's what it's labeled as. It feels like a deeper dive, 5 o'clock, but live before lock it is. It's presented by PrizePicks. I'm Dave Loughran at Laffy_D, joined by Adam Scherer at Ship My Money DFS, breaking down a 7-game MLB slate, getting started at 7:20 Eastern time tonight. We got a bunch to dive into. More interesting than the one we talked about the other day. Despite 12 games, although not a ton of good pitching, but a lot of those guys ended up far outperforming what we projected for them. How you feeling today, man?
Pretty good. Looking forward to this one. 7-game slate, decent size slate. We also have a 4-game turbo slate, which is nice at 6:30. So yeah, looking forward to it. Not a lot of pitching again today, and also some of the good pitching facing really dangerous offenses. So it seems like another pretty fun tournament slate. You do have the Coors game, so obviously that is going to pull a lot of ownership, and how that goes is going to heavily determine the winners of the slate. But pretty fun overall, I think.
Man, your tweet the other night. I was out at I was in Hershey, PA, at a comedy show, and I looked down because if people I follow tweet at me, I get a notification for it, but not. I don't know if you do the same, if yours is the same way set up on your phone, but for me, it's like I get notifications for certain people, and I see deodorizing my balls and my name. I'm like, where could this possibly be going? And the tweet was more or less like, is it weird that every time I deodorize my balls before I go out at night, I think of Laffy? And oddly, there was a sense of pride that I was overwhelmed by. So thank you. Were you sober at that point?
Yeah. I was just sitting on my couch getting ready to go out.
So my question is, what thoughts? Is it just like my face that pops
it's just your face.
Like
as I'm touching my balls, it's just your face.
But it's not like a hallucination of my hand.
No,
moisturizing your nuts.
No, you're not touching me.
I'm just watching you perform the act. Okay.
Jordan's face right now.
Because I woke up the next day and I saw all these, because I wasn't really looking at my phone that night, right? So you saw me, I was tweeting back at like a couple word answers because I was, during the show. So I wake up the next morning, I'm looking at it, I'm like, I wonder what this means. Like, does it go deeper than this? But yeah, good stuff. Anyway.
Yeah. I woke up the next day and you always wake up after drinking. It's like, I hope I didn't say anything stupid. And I'm going back to my time. I'm like, oh, nope, I was completely sober for that one. So
yeah, right. Happy to have you guys. I'm very good at not tweeting when I'm drunk. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just like, I don't know what, I should say not tweeting stupid stuff. I say that now, and then, Friday night's going to be the end of me.
Sure.
But generally speak, sometimes I do wake up and I go like, yeah, that was kind of stupid. I probably could have done without it, but
right.
I say enough ridiculous stuff sober, so it makes no difference.
Yeah, that helps balance mine out too. So
yeah, like you catch me at 10 a.m. saying something wild. Anyway, happy to have you guys with us. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Subscribe to the channel. Yeah, show us a little love here. Take a single second. Take a single second and hit that thumbs up. Subscribe and help us out here along the way. Goes a long way for us. You ready to talk a little baseball? We got 7 games.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, let's do it. We got the Dodgers on the road against the Atlanta Braves. Gavin Stone, Charlie Morton. So let's dive into Stone first. I want your scouting report here because he's made 1 appearance this season, got blown up, just essentially got nothing as far as swings and misses goes. But it was 1 start. I mean, I guess take that what it's worth. But he's also going up against the Atlanta Braves in Atlanta today. This is a guy who at AAA this season, you're looking like he crushed through every other level and even AAA last year. But this year, yeah, he struck out batters at a 27% clip, but the walk rate was highly elevated, had some problems with home runs. So what do you make of him today against the Atlanta Braves?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall he looks like a pretty solid arm. He's a highly ranked young pitcher. Ground ball percentage at AAA this year was good as well. You mentioned the strikeout percentage. He also had a 47% ground ball percentage, 44% last year, 45% at AA in 2022. So seems, pretty good at getting ground balls, good at getting strikeouts. The way I view him on this slate, though, is like I have no confidence in him. The Braves have a 5.2 implied run total. it's obviously a very dangerous spot. Now, there are a lot of good pitchers, like I had mentioned a few minutes ago. A lot of the good pitchers on this slate are also in dangerous matchups. For example, Charlie Morton on the other side of this game. So if you need to save money at SP2, he at least has talent and you can go there. But I also don't think you're going to need to do that very often because hitter pricing just isn't that sharp today. Like there's teams where, maybe their best hitters are expensive, but then the bottom of the order is just free. Like, and even looking at, Coors Field, I think you have like 4 guys in the Marlins lineup that are sub 3K on DraftKings, or at least in their projected lineup. So I don't think you're going to need the $5,400 pitcher all that much, but he is at least talented enough where if you're just looking at a lineup and it's like, oh man, I really like everything here, except I have $5,400 for an SP2. Don't expect a lot out of him, but he does at least have talent.
You think he can go deep if he's pitching well?
I don't expect him to be like significantly limited.
Yeah, I guess not. I mean, 77 pitches in that one start, earlier this month, but
right. Like I'm not expecting like a 100 pitch, 8 inning outing. Only 35 2/3 innings in his 8 starts at AAA this year. But like you said, mid 70s, 80, 85. Like I expect him to be allowed to go deep enough that if he's pitching well at 5,400, he can pretty easily pay that off.
He's dirt cheap. He has a 5% leverage score in our top pitchers tool. You should use that, by the way. 50% off all of our tools for a week or a month for every single sport. If you're looking to get in on that, link in the description and in chat. 50% off everything. Or you just want to do the MLB lineup generator for less than $4.50 a week. That's a sick brand new tool that we just came out with 2 weeks ago. You can lock players, swap players, upload it all to CSV. We're already giving you the best lineups and you can set stack types and all. I mean, honestly, you got nothing to lose. Try it out. It's $4.48 for the week. Even if you're playing a few dollars a day, it's worth taking it for a test drive. But yeah, like I said, 50% off any weekly or monthly sub or 50% off the MLB lineup generator. MLB lineup generator also comes with the weekly or monthly sub if you're going stochastic plus platinum, but you can do that a la carte. And as you guys know, my DMs are always open on Twitter. If you've DM'd me before, I almost always answer to help you out if you have questions with what sub or getting through to support or whatever like that. But yeah, 6% top 2 pitcher score percentage, 1% ownership, 5% leverage. I suppose, like you said, if you're going with like just a top ranked expensive stack, maybe you could do worse because he does have strikeout stuff, but it could also just end in a fiery crash.
Right. Yeah. And I ran some lineups before the show. So it's not with updated lineups, but if I were playing 150 lineups, Stone showed up like 10% of the time. So it is someone that I guess if you're playing 150 in large field tournaments, I'd be over the field, but not going crazy. It's certainly nothing I have confidence in, but the one sort of saving grace in addition to him being cheap is that I don't have confidence in pretty much any pitcher not named Luis Castillo today.
Yeah, they're minus 310 on the money line or something.
The Mariners?
Yeah.
Yeah, the A's, at least as of this morning, had a 2.5. Yeah, still there. 2.5 implied run total.
Is it really 2.5?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a bad baseball team.
They are plus 270 in a Major League Baseball game. Like, it doesn't get much worse than
that's
that.
What I was saying. Yeah, exactly. I think Seattle currently minus 315. What do you think the A's chances are of winning the World Series?
Like actual or according to the line? Because actual, it's 0.
Yeah, actual. No, I meant according to the line.
I mean, they're like plus 100,000.
They are, yeah. There's 3 other teams that are plus 100,000. Can you guess them?
I was looking at this like yesterday. I don't remember who they are though. Like Kansas City. Is Kansas City one?
Oh yeah, because you were bitching about your Orioles being 14th.
Yeah.
When really you should be celebrating that. If you buy into it, you should look at that and go, oh shit, 40.
I mean, it's just a price that stands out. Like
you were a little upset.
They have lower odds to win the World Series than the Cardinals, who suck.
Yes, and the same as the Mariners. Yeah, you were a little irked by it.
I mean, they're underdogs like every game they play too. Like I still haven't started doing it. I probably should. I'm pretty sure they were the most profitable team to bet on all of last season if you just took their money line every game. And I don't know the numbers, but it's got to be similar so far this year.
Did you bet them to win the World Series at 40-1? No. Well, who are the other 3 teams?
Was Kansas City one of them?
Yep.
All right. So KC, Oakland, Colorado.
Yep.
And I'm probably not going to get the 4. Yeah.
Nationals.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Nationals. Yeah. Tigers.
Yeah, Tigers would have been a good guess also.
Tigers are plus 60,601 there.
How do you separate the Tigers from those other teams by that
Yeah,
much?
that's one of those weird things that the only thing I can think of, and I don't pay much attention to divisions, but maybe their divisions just
their division does suck.
Right. Their division, it's just would be odds of maybe sneaking into. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. Nobody in that division is good except for kind of the Twins.
Right. All right. What about Charlie Morton? Charlie Morton's almost 40 years old, and he's having a nice 24% strikeout rate. You know, it's above league average. There's no real numbers of Charlie Morton that stick out and go, hey man, this guy stinks. Like he's pitched well, but he's getting what? 18% ownership right now. We haven't gotten to Luis Castillo's ownership yet, or Corbin Burns and Javier, but Charlie Morton's the 5th highest owned pitcher on this slate. Slight positive leverage, 21% top 2 probability on DraftKings. Do you have any interest in him? Obviously not the best matchup here against the Dodgers, but he is getting a little bit of love at 9,400, no less.
Yeah, not the best matchup, but you're just going to run into that issue quite a bit. So still interested in getting to him. Not a lot of confidence. Certainly prefer Luis Castillo, but you know, the ownership is totally different as well. He's showing up like with the lineups I ran earlier, I'd be under the field on Morton, but I wouldn't be surprised if that comes up when I rerun everything. It's not like it's a stance that I'm very confident in. It's just there's several pitchers like Morton. You have Corbin Burns as another one where they're decent strikeout pitchers. Burns has, you know, I guess more concerns than Morton right now, given how he's pitched so far this year, but, you know, decent strikeout pitchers in tough matchups. Morton so far this year is still striking out 23.5, 24% of hitters. He's been solid. The matchup is just tough. 3.59 FIP. So given the slate, like he should be getting some ownership, especially on DraftKings where you need the roster 2 pitchers. On FanDuel, he's only getting 10%. There, he's essentially just a pivot away from Luis Castillo, which is fine. But on DraftKings, getting 18 to 20%, just because you need the roster 2 pitchers. And again, outside of Castillo, there's nothing that stands out as somebody where like, oh yeah, this guy can't fail. It's just a bunch of guys where it's like, oh, they're pretty good, and I don't like this, and this about them, but I still have to roster pitchers.
What do you want to do with either side on the offense here against Morton and against Stone?
Yeah, I think they're kind of interesting in terms of just large field tournament stacks. Neither one has a great matchup. Atlanta, I think it's fair to say, has the better matchup, given that Stone has essentially no major league experience. So Atlanta's actually coming in 4th in top stack percentage, going a little bit over-owned, but they are a team that typically you'll see their aggregate ownership be a little bit misleading because Ronald Acuna is always popular. So I think that, you know, overall, when you look at the individual ownership, it's not too concerning. Acuna is pulling 20%. The next highest owned guy on DraftKings is Olsen, and Albies at 11%. Murphy's at 10. Harris is at about 10. So Acuna is driving up that aggregate ownership number a bit. They look like a middle of the road stack. The Dodgers are coming in a little bit below them. 6% chance of being the top stack. Only 3.5% ownership. Dodgers are 4th from the bottom in stack score. Atlanta is 5th from the bottom. So they are both relatively expensive, which makes them tough to get to as well. So basically it's just a spot where both offenses are really high upside offenses. Ownership is reasonable. If you can find the salary to get there, great, but it's just going to be difficult to do it frequently, given that you have a lot of cheap offenses in good spots.
Oh, wow. NFL approved Thursday night flex scheduling, and teams get 28 days notice.
Oh, so they can once they realize that like a team that they thought was going to be good sucks, they can just kick them off for the rest of the year.
Can we call this the Russell Wilson rule?
Right. That's what I was
seriously.
Yeah. Well, and this year I assume it's going to apply to the Jets.
That's exactly what I was thinking too. Yeah. That is the most volatile situation right now. And they have like 9 primetime games.
Right.
That could go south in a hurry. And Green Bay hosting the 2025 draft.
I thought they hosted it they were supposed to host it in 2020.
I think it's that's a sick place, man. I went there for an Eagles game. It is the drinking atmosphere is awesome. Just 2 bars basically, but they're awesome bars. And everybody's there. There's nothing else. That's it.
Yeah. I've heard it's fun because my friends and I had kind of talked about it because we went to the draft in Nashville in 2019.
And that was probably great.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And we were like, all right, we're just gonna like do this every year. And then I think it was 2020 was supposed to be Vegas, 2021, or I don't know the order, but it was supposed to be like Nashville, Vegas, Green Bay. And I think, and so like we were immediately like, all right, are we gonna do Green Bay or are we just gonna go somewhere else like during the draft? And I was like, oh, Green Bay's probably fun, but then obviously got skipped because of COVID, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. The only problem is you can't get an Uber back to your hotel if you're not in walking distance because there's just not enough of them.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
I jumped into an Uber and I was like, listen, I'm not the guy that called, but we'll pay you double in cash. And he took us home. That was the only way we could.
Sounds like something I would do 100%.
Yeah, you have to. We weren't going to get home. And my buddy's stumbling all over himself. I just threw him in and we got home. But yeah, fun place. If you could go to that, definitely recommend. So I want to get to this next game, but it was Tyler in chat that mentioned the A's have scored more runs than the Padres. So I was like, well, naturally I have to look up what the A's pitching is in relation to the rest of the league. They're pitching, all pitchers, not just starters, 5.57 xFIP. That's about a run worse than the next worst team.
That is unbelievably bad.
What?
That is unbelievably bad.
Unbelievable. Their team, their pitchers collectively have a 12% walk rate. They have a 6% K minus BB rate.
I don't understand why people in Oakland are even fighting to keep this team.
It's nuts. 1.68 whip. So it's just guys are constantly on base. That's terrible, terrible team. All right. Detroit and Kansas City. And by the way, we got 7 games. So yeah, got to fill this up with some stuff along the way. 7 games is not a lot for baseball. Let's get to Detroit and Kansas City. So the Detroit Tigers, Michael Lorenzen, Brady Singer. I mean, naturally you look at this and you wouldn't normally love this, but Singer getting 17% ownership today, Lorenzen getting 2% ownership. I guess we can start with Lorenzen on the Detroit side of this one. Is there any interest there? Even though he has a high leverage score, do you think this is something that is just avoidable, or where would you put him at 7,800 compared to the rest of the field of pitchers today?
I think he's okay as a pivot. He's not one that I'm getting to right now. You know, again, that could change. Not a very good strikeout pitcher, does a decent job of limiting power, and is in a favorable park for pitchers. Since the start of last year, 19% K percentage to righties, 21% to lefties, only a 116 expected ISO to righties, 160 to lefties. So doesn't really get, doesn't give up a ton of power, just doesn't get a lot of strikeouts either. Looking at the top pitchers tool, it's really interesting in this price range because you have Brady Singer at 7K pulling 17% ownership on DraftKings right now. You have Bailey Ober at 8,100 pulling 24%. In between those two, or around those two, you have Tanner Houck at 7,500 at 4%, Michael Lorenzen 7,800 2%, and Edward Cabrera 8,300 in cores at 1%. And I agree that Ober and Singer are the two best options in terms of projection and just, matchup and everything considered, but they're also going over-owned relative to those other three. So like you look at Singer, 14.5% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, 20% chance of being a top 2 value, 17% owned. Tanner Houck, 14% chance of being top 2, 4% owned. Michael Lorenzen, 11.5% at 2% owned. So like Singer's more likely to succeed, but not by a 8-1 margin. And then Ober, who is $300 more, is basically twice as likely to be a top 2 pitcher as Lorenzen, but he's getting like 10 times the ownership. So you're going to prefer Ober and Singer, but it is a spot where I think there's a lot of good hitting chalk today. Like you have Miami in cores with cheap price tags. One way that you can roster those guys if you're looking to and still be somewhat contrarian is going to somebody like Lorenzen or Tanner Houck or Cabrera at much lower ownership. So I think that's sort of where Lorenzen fits in. I don't really want to get to him. I don't think he's a very good DFS pitcher. I think the price tag is about where it should be, if not a little bit too high, but none of these guys are that good.
Yeah, well, just look at Singer too. He has 120 fantasy point game this season, and it's not a huge surprise. 8% swinging strike rate. He has a strikeout rate that sits under 20% right now. And it's not like he's done a bang up job of preventing runs. He's been fine in some games, but other games he's getting tuned up, and that's with him failing to rack up a ton of Ks. he has one game this season with more than 5 strikeouts. So I understand he's cheaper than Lorenzen. It's also not a bad matchup against Detroit. But to your point, I 100% get what you're saying here. It's not like this is a particularly high upside guy, even if he's on.
Right. Like he should be. He's got good stuff. He's a former first round pick. You would think that he'd be getting better, as he gets more time in the majors, but that hasn't been the case. Not to say he won't, or, he won't be good or he won't get better, but he's been flat out bad this season. Like talking about Singer, 19.5% strikeout percentage, 4.78 FIP, 1.4 home runs per 9, 286 expected ISO to lefties so far, 174 to righties. I get it's a good matchup. He's cheap. He's talented, but it hasn't been there this year. He's been worse than last year. If you look at whiffs per swing, if you look at expected WOBA this year versus over, the last couple of seasons, he's taken a pretty big step back, at least so far. So I think Singer's a good play. I understand why people are playing him. He projects well, matchup's good, talent's there, all of that. But it's not like you can look at this guy and say like, oh yeah, he's a pitcher I have a lot of confidence in. So this is a range where I like making some of those pivots away from ownership.
Let's talk about bats here too. As far as top stack percentage goes, there's Detroit 6.5%. It's basically middle of the pack today. Kansas City at 4.5%. You're not going to be paying a large amount for either of these teams. From a value standpoint, both of them rank towards the top. Both of them relatively unowned. Do we look to maybe some semi-contrarian KC or Detroit stacks today?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting game. It's sort of similar to, we just had that series where the Tigers played the Nats. And, on the surface, you look at those games and it's just like, well, I don't really want any of this because everybody sucks. The pitching's not very good. The teams can't really hit. The park in this case isn't great. But the way I kind of think about it is, we just talked about Brady Singer being relatively popular, being a very risky 7K option, but 7K is a pretty cheap price tag. So either Brady Singer pays it off pretty easily or he doesn't. And if he doesn't, given how cheap Detroit's lineup is, if Brady Singer can't pay off a 7K price tag, there's a very good chance that Detroit has several players that did very, very well given how cheap they are. So it creates a pretty interesting spot. They're fourth. Detroit is in stack score, which again is the metric that combines top stack percentage and ownership. I mentioned, the issues that Singer's had with power this year, particularly to lefties. The park will help to mitigate some of that, but Riley Green looks pretty good at 4,700. Akil Baddoo is only 2,400. Unfortunately, Kerry Carpenter on the injured list, so he's not in the lineup today. But you do get Nick Maton from the left side, Zach McKinstry from the left side as well. Those two aren't exactly power hitters. You're looking more to Green and Baddoo for that. But you do have 4 lefties in the top 6. The 2 righties being Javier Baez and Spencer Torkelson. So I'm interested in the Tiger side, and I'm interested in the KC side as well. Even though Lorenzen doesn't give up a lot of power, KC at least does have real legitimate hitters in their lineup. They did move Bobby Witt down to 6th today, which is interesting. That obviously sucks for Witt, but the plus side is that we now have Nick Prado leading off at 2,900, first base and outfield eligible. Pasquantino 4,100 hitting second. Perez, Melendez, Massey, Witt. That's a solid 1 through 6 for KC. A team that offensively is not very good, but they do have legitimate hitting prospects at the top of the order, plus Salvador Perez, who obviously is not a prospect, but a lot of young talent at the top of this order that does give you a pretty nice ceiling.
You want to move on to this Houston-Milwaukee game?
Yes.
All right, let's do it. So we mentioned it earlier, but Luis Castillo just very, very popular for good reason. I'm not going to belabor that. We'll get to that game later. Christian Javier, 3rd highest owned pitcher today. You look at the leverage score, it's basically where, his ownership appears to be where it should be. 25%, 25% top 2 percentage, 28% ownership. So nothing crazy there. Going up against the Milwaukee team this season that against righties is middle of the league in K rate. WRC plus, you're talking about a Brewers team that is also middle of the league. So through and through, you just look at this team, they're pretty much a middle of the road matchup today against Javier on pretty much basically any metric.
Yeah, and Javier has been good this year, striking out about 28.5% of hitters, Park isn't great, but the matchup's okay. 28.5% strikeout percentage, 3.52 FIP. He's definitely one of the better pitchers on the slate. You're just paying a lot for him as well. He's $1,000 more than Burns. He's $600 more than Morton. He's $800 more than Castillo. He's the most expensive pitcher on DraftKings. So I do think he's a good play if you can get there. 28% ownership with a 25% chance of being a top 2 scoring pitcher. He's sandwiched between Castillo and Burns in terms of top 2 percentage, and they're both getting quite a bit more ownership than he is. So if you can find the extra money, I think that's good. He's a really interesting tournament play on FanDuel because like on DraftKings, he's still pulling, 25 to 30% ownership since you have to roster 2 pitchers. On FanDuel, because Castillo is going to pull so much ownership, you have Castillo getting 43% ownership. If you just find an extra $300, you can get Christian Javier at 1/6 of Luis Castillo's ownership. Now, Castillo is clearly the higher projected pitcher. There's no doubt about that. But from a range of outcome standpoint, they're not all that dissimilar. And you're just getting a fraction of the ownership there. So it creates a really interesting spot on FanDuel. On DraftKings, it's interesting because he is lower owned than Castillo and Burns, but it's not as interesting because you're still not getting anywhere near single digit ownership.
Where would you rank him among exposure right now? Or where is he right now as far as exposure goes for your pitchers on DraftKings?
In the crunch I ran earlier, I only got like 7%, about the same as Morton, but it's the same as I said about Morton. Like that is something that easily could just end up being, 30% by the time we get the lock. It's not that I think he's a bad player or anything. It's just that I was getting contrarian with some pitching because I was getting the popular bats, and amongst the popular pitchers, I was getting to more Castillo, Ober, Burns, and so Morton and Javier and Singer were kind of the ones getting cut out.
All right, well, let's flip to Corbin Burns then, because he's getting 36% against Houston this year. I guess the question with Corbin Burns is on a start-to-start basis, how do we evaluate this guy right now?
Good question. I have no idea. He's been bad this year. There's especially by his standards at least. 4.05 FIP is fine. Not what you expect from Corbin Burns, but it's fine. 21.6% strikeout percentage is much lower than you typically get from him. That's what really stands out. He's had some issues with expected power as well. Against right-handed hitters, 211 expected ISO. Lefty's doing basically nothing against him, but he just hasn't been the same pitcher this year. He's not getting swings and misses as frequently. He's not getting strikeouts, but he is only 9K. This is somebody that, at his peak was typically 10K, 10.5. The matchup against Houston is tough. I'm surprised he's getting 36% ownership. I thought it would be a little bit lower than that. I got around 20 in the crunch that I ran before the show. I think he's comparable to Morton, where at this point, I'm just viewing him as a good pitcher that I'm not super confident in, especially in the matchup. It's always really tough with guys like Burns. Like nothing about what he's done this year looks very good. But at the end of the day, most guys are still just going to play to the back of their baseball card by the end of the year. And you're going to get, good starts going forward. So there's obviously some chance that something's wrong and he's just going to drop off. But like we saw with Aaron Nola the other day, where everything looked bad for Aaron Nola compared to where he's usually at. But it's still a relatively young pitcher that is probably just going to start putting good starts together. It's the same thing for Burns.
What's weird about Burns, though? Looking at some of this plate discipline data on Fangraphs. So for his career, 31.5% outside swing rate. This year, 27.9%. And then look at his outside contact rate. For his career, 42.7%. This year, it's at 50%. So they're swinging less and they're making way more contact when they swing on pitches outside of the zone. That's not what you're looking for if you're looking to get strikeouts.
Yeah, 100%. And looking at his whiffs per swing. So since the start of the 2021 season, he has a 35% whiffs per swing percentage. So far this year, 28.9%. So about a 17%.
Wow.
17% drop in whiffs per swing for Burns.
Yes, contact rate 72%. His overall contact rate's 72%. So yeah, that's not what you're looking for. So how much of them are you getting right now?
I got about 20.
It's 20%.
So, yeah, under the 36% mark, which seemed high to me, but it's really though what it keeps coming back to. And like I don't have strong preferences between Morton, Burns, Javier. I'd like to get the Javier more if I could, but he's also more expensive. I kind of just view it all the same, where it's like Charlie Morton's strikeout stuff's down a little bit this year. He has been pitching well, but he's got a really tough matchup. Burns has a tough matchup, and his stuff's been a lot worse this year. Javier's got a relatively difficult matchup in a tough park. So there's just no one pitcher of that group that I can point to and say like, oh yeah, I really, really like this guy. And so it kind of comes back to, I'm going to end up playing all of them at least a little bit.
So on the other side then with Houston bats, because the weird thing with Corbin Burns is like, he hasn't been good from a fantasy standpoint, but he also isn't getting blown up. And you mentioned it. Some of the expected rates are not great, but he's managed to limit the damage as far as runs crossing the plate and leaving the park. 0.87 home runs per 9. His xFIP is 4.27, but nothing insanely bad that I've seen as far as what we've gotten, through his however many starts he's made this season. Even though he hasn't been great, and also 48% ground ball rate, does Houston, because I look at it, I go, Corbin Burns, man, he's 36% owned. He has a minus 14% leverage score in the top pitchers tool. Does that make Houston appealing to you, or does it make this matchup on both sides less appealing than it should be?
Houston's sort of appealing just because they have good hitters and Burns hasn't been missing bats, but there's a couple things working in Burns' favor here. I think one is that Jose Altuve is not in the lineup, so you're getting a little bit weaker Houston lineup than you will typically get. The other thing is that while he hasn't been getting strikeouts against either side of the plate, he has still been dominant against left-handed hitters in terms of limiting production. Lefties so far this year have a 238 expected WOBA against Burns. Their expected ISO is 0.54. And he is somebody that has a really, really good cutter, a pitch that can get in on left-handed hands and take away a lot of power. So when you think about the Houston lineup, you don't have Altuve. You have Alvarez and Tucker as their two best hitters. And I'm not saying that you can't play Alvarez and Tucker, or that, they're not still insanely difficult matchups. They're about as good as it gets. But the two best hitters on Houston are both left-handed. And this guy has been still dominant at preventing production against lefties. So from a right-handed power standpoint, all you really have here is Alex Bregman and Jeremy Pena. Jose Abreu hasn't hit for power at all this year. I don't think, Mauricio Dubon is not somebody you think about as a power hitter. The bottom of the order is not very good. So it's still a tough matchup, but the lineup does set up about as well as a Houston lineup can for Corbin Burns.
Okay. Any interest in Milwaukee bats?
Not really. Javier's been good this year. The park is favorable. That's kind of the only thing that I see working in their favor, but I don't think I'll get to them much.
Time to talk about San Francisco, Minnesota. Before we do, though, shout out to our sponsor, PrizePicks. Adam, yesterday we had another instance of someone getting a shot at $1 million, and Kevin went with all overs. And I think he went like 1 for 6. So, you win
close.
some, you lose some, but
yeah,
no $1 million for
that
Kevin.
Sounds like my typical live final experience.
I think I've seen only one person take home 80K, because if you get 5 or 6, it's 80K. 4 or 6, it's 4 or 6, it's 16K. Every day PrizePicks is taken, every day throughout the NBA playoffs, PrizePicks is taking someone randomly who enters a lineup in the 6-pick flex play, and they're giving them a shot at $1 million. They give them a 6-pick flex play card. It's worth like 40,000. And then if they hit all 6 of them, they get $1 million. I've had fun looking at some of these cards each day. This guy went two baseball, 4 basketball, multiple overs for the same team. The Boston Celtics. Take
any unders?
What's that?
Any unders?
No, I told you he went all overs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They always do. Yeah.
Yeah. Boston Celtics, man, it doesn't look good for them.
No, it does not.
Crazy.
I'm really enjoying it. I'm not sure if you knew, but I had bet James McCool $500 that the Celtics would get out of the second round. And the way it all came up was during the regular season, he was just talking about how like fraudulent the Celtics were. And I'm reading it, and I'm just like, yeah, whatever. And then he said something about like Miami being a team that could knock them out. And I'm just like, all right, this is insane. So then I reply and we start talking. We make the bet. So he loses that bet because they got by the Sixers, and then they're getting knocked out by Miami, which is like the entire reason I actually jumped in.
Oh, it's a slap in the face.
Yeah.
It's insult. It's salt in the wound.
Yep.
Yeah. You said so you made the bet that they wouldn't be eliminated in the second round.
I said the Celtics would advance past the second round.
Got you. Okay. Oh, well, that's great.
Yeah,
you know what else is great? The fact that you get a free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum when you sign up with the link in the description or chat using PrizePicks. Or using the link to get on PrizePicks. all you got to do is deposit. I think it's like $10 minimum. My recommendation, because you're getting $100, 100% first match deposit bonus up to $100. You throw 100 in, so you double that, and now you have 200. And you're getting every single tool that we have over at Stochastic. Adam and I all show long referencing the top pitchers tool, the top stacks tool. If you watch NBA Live Before Lock tonight, you'll hear them referencing the boom bust tool and ownership and player projections. The MLB lineup generator we talk about so often that just came out a couple weeks ago. MMA, PGA, NHL, NBA, MLB, everything. NASCAR, F1. The great thing is, if you're using these tools, you don't even have to know the sports as long as you understand how to use the tools. And we got tutorials for all of them. Better than that, though, is it's free. It's $120. If you were to just pay for it, it's $120. Okay. You sign up at PrizePicks, you're getting the first match deposit bonus. So whatever you deposit up to $100, you're getting back. You're doubling your bankroll out of the gate. And then you're getting all of the tools that we have over at Stochastic, not only to win on PrizePicks, where you're just building cards with overs or unders, no juice, just overs or unders. Don't take all overs every single time. You'll lose your ass. Use our tools. Be smart. Use our projections. If you go 5-pick flex play, you 10x. But unlike a traditional parlay, if you hit 4 of 5, you still 2x. If you still make money back if you hit 3 of 5. So you're sustaining your bankroll with a shot to hit big, whether it's 5-pick flex play, 6-pick flex play. You can mix up as many sports as you want. Use all of our tools that you're getting for free and use them for DFS too. You get this free month. You're not just getting PrizePicks tools. You're getting all of our DFS tools across the board, including the premium Discord, the lineup generator, all the ownership, top stacks, top pitchers tools, everything for every sport. So if you're not in yet, you're in a legal state for PrizePicks. Likely not a legal betting state, so you're trying to, scratch that itch. No better place or time to do it. It's the best promo we have. Check it out. PrizePicks, sponsor of the Live Before Lock show. And if PrizePicks isn't available to you, just use our BetMGM promo, because you get a free month there, and you get first bet insurance up to $1,000. So no matter how much you lose, up to $1,000 on your first bet, it all comes back to you in bonus bets. We do these free months in partnership with BetMGM and PrizePicks because we expect you to win when you use the free tools. And you'll probably want to hang around because you'll have made enough money using the tools to say, all right, well, I'm going to keep using these tools. And then you become part of the family. So whether it's PrizePicks or BetMGM, whatever your state, check it out in the link in description. Get the bonuses, get the free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum, and get to work. Must be 21 years or older to gamble. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's keep it going. San Francisco Giants on the road here tonight against the Minnesota Twins. I think Manaea is expected to be the long reliever here.
Yeah.
Do you want to,
John Brebbia?
Yeah. Are you doing anything with pitching for San Francisco?
You can roll the dice on Manaea if you want to. I don't think I'm going to get to much. We have him with a 4.5% chance of being the top 2 pitcher, 1% projected ownership. The top 2 pitcher percentage has come down quite a bit since this morning, which I expected it to. We don't know how deep he's going to go. I assume he can throw like 70 to 75 pitches. That's what he's typically, been doing before he gets removed from starts where he pitches awful. But I don't really know what their plan is with him going forward. They had him warming up in the 7th or 8th inning of a game the other day. He ended up not coming in, but I don't know if they're actually planning on treating him like a normal reliever and maybe he's just going to go like 2 or 3 innings, or if this is just a way to get him to avoid the top of the order, because his strikeout stuff's been good this year. Got a 25.5% strikeout percentage. Everything else has been unbelievably bad for Manaea. 5.94 FIP, 12.7% walk percentage, 2 home runs per 9 innings. So he's cheap. And if you think he can go 5 innings, or 75 pitches, which, he probably could, he's playable given the strikeout stuff, but just how bad he's been. And a spot that, a relatively tough matchup, 4.7 implied run total for the Twins. If I'm going, below the Brady Singer 7K price point, I'm more likely to be getting to Gavin Stone than Sean Manaea.
I guess the silver lining here, and you just listed off all of Sean Manaea's stats, many of which are not good. I guess the silver lining is that Minnesota has the 2nd highest K rate in the league against left-handed pitchers, behind only the Milwaukee Brewers. So a bit of a silver lining there, right? With Manaea having a 25% strikeout rate. I also wonder how long he keeps that up, but he's walking batters at 12% too, which is just not good.
Yeah. Like the strikeout upside is there. And that's why there's some level of interest for me. But the fact that we don't know exactly how many innings they want him to pitch here is a pretty big deterrent because, I don't want, if you tell me, if he's pitching well, you tell me he can go innings 2 through 7. Like, I'm at least somewhat interested at 6,200, but I don't know. Like, what if, like, if he's pitching well and he just gets him to the 5th inning, are they going to be like, oh, well, that's more than we expected out of you. Good job. You're done. So the strikeout stuff is intriguing, but I mean, 300 expected ISO to righties this year.
Wow.
262 to lefties.
I mean, 300 expected ISO is what the ex-WOBA should be.
Right. The ex-WOBA, though, is 433.
Right. That's really bad.
Yeah.
That's real bad.
Even since the start of last year, 202 to righties, it's 150 to lefties. But yeah, like I'm going to be leaning towards Minnesota. I probably won't get to Manaea.
Okay. You're going to get to any Ober?
Yeah. Ober's looking pretty good. I said before that I don't have strong preferences on the non-Luis Castillo, quote unquote, good pitchers. Ober is one that I feel relatively confident in. The Giants have been an above average offense against right-handed pitching this year. They have a 3.8 implied run total. There are some strikeouts to be had here, though. And Ober is a solid pitcher. 24% strikeout percentage this year, 3 FIP, 0.6 home runs per 9, only walking 6% of hitters, 145 expected ISO to lefties. He has gotten lucky in terms of right-handed power, only a 140 actual ISO to righties, 254 expected ISO, but still only a 290 expected WOBA. So, he's run good on home runs essentially, but still a 29% strikeout percentage against righties and sub 300 expected WOBA. Lefties are going to make up most of the Giants lineup. He only has a 20% strikeout percentage against lefties, but still hasn't really gotten hit hard. 307 expected WOBA, 145 expected ISO. So all things considered, I think Ober is one of the best pitching options on the slate. He's a little bit, he's $900 less than Burns on DraftKings. He's $1,300 less than Morton. He's got at least a little bit less scary matchup, especially than Morton. So I do think I'll end up getting to a good amount of Ober as long as the ownership doesn't, get too much.
And just wrapping this one up with San Francisco bats against Ober. They have 7 lefties in the lineup today. Like you said, he hasn't been tuned up by them, but also allowing a decent amount of contact to opposite-handed bats. Any interest in these San Francisco bats?
Not too much in San Francisco. Ober's done a good job limiting power, to both sides of the plate. San Francisco's coming in middle of the pack in stack score. They are going under-owned. If you're just looking for a low-owned team, 5% chance of being the top stack, 2% projected ownership. You do typically run into a little bit of pinch hit risk here because the Giants do typically platoon, but I'm not as concerned about it lefty versus righty as righty versus lefty because you just don't have as many left-handed relief pitchers to come in. You do get some value here at the way they set up this lineup. Blake Sable's hitting 5th, 3,400 catcher and outfield. Casey Schmidt, 3,200 hitting 6th, third base and shortstop. So this is a cheap team that isn't getting ownership, but it's also not a spot that I really like getting to.
14 likes away from 100 here. 14. We just need 14 of you almost 500 fine people to take a single second. We got busy lives. Our heads are all jumbled. I'm here to just remind you, hey, maybe you forgot. You came in, you were so excited for this show and you forgot. Now we only need 12. So I'll thank you in advance because I'm confident we'll get there with relative ease over the next 13 minutes. Miami and Colorado in Colorado here. Okay, so it's a Coors Field day, and we know what that means. Miami, top stack percentage right now in the top stack tool. Again, 50% off all of our tools. You want to get in on this and be able to actually use them and not just hear us reference them every day, do that. Or just rock the Hall of Fame, rock the stochastic avatar. Jordan can put it up on the screen. You rock the avatar, finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, and, well, you get a free month. And you get inducted into the Hall of Fame from this guy right here. And that'll just make your fucking day. All right, 19.8% top stack probability. No one else is above 11.8%. That's Colorado, but both of them right now, the only 2 double-digit top stack probabilities that we have on the slate today. But also Miami, we have Adam as the top value score here. Also, unsurprisingly, by far the highest owned stack on this slate. It's not even remotely close. Highest stack score in the top stacks tool across the board. And I actually want to start here instead of pitching since it's Coors Field. Unequivocally, Miami is the most popular and highest ranked stack tonight on this 7-game slate.
Yeah, and they should be. I mean, they're really popular. They have a 30.5% aggregate ownership percentage, but like you were saying, 20% to be the top stack, but also 16.5% top value. Their stack score is 18.6. The next highest is Colorado at 9.2. So value wise and top stack wise, we have Miami as the best stack by double the next closest. So they're going to be really popular. It's going to be tough to make lineups around them that are contrarian. Every single player in their projected lineup is projected for at least 18% ownership. Gene Segura leads the way along with Nick Fortes at 38%. So it is going to be tough, but there are still ways to do it. You know, I've mentioned as we've gone through these games that you have some mid-range pitchers that aren't very or are very risky, but aren't really that much riskier than the guys that are getting ownership. So you can do it that way. You can use lower owned teams, like maybe mix in some of those Giants we just talked about as a secondary stack with Miami. That can make some sense. So it sets up as a really good spot. Chase Anderson has only thrown 10 innings in the majors this year. You have to go back to 2021 to get any sort of real sample for him. 196 expected ISO to righties over that time, 132 to lefties. If you go back to 2020, you get 227 to righties, 159 to lefties. And Miami's pretty cheap too. Like you have Jorge Soler, who's expensive. Arise is expensive. Garrett Cooper's 5K on DraftKings. Everybody else is sub 5K. John Birdie's 4,500. Everybody else is 3,700 or less. The bottom of this order, the bottom 4 hitters in Miami's projected lineup are all sub 3K in cores. It's a really, really tough spot to get away from. You just need to make sure that within your lineup, you're finding ways to be different.
All right. What about Edward Cabrera, though? Because he does have filthy strikeout stuff. His biggest issue, he's just walking guys at an alarming clip, right? But when that's not the case, I mean, he's got a 30% strikeout rate this year, which is significant. I talked about this the other day with Washington. Against Washington has one of the lowest walk rates in the league. He didn't walk a single batter, went 5 innings. He would have gone longer. He only threw 79 pitches, came out of that game with a blister. He was having a pretty decent start, struck out 6, nice game. Colorado has one of the lowest walk rates in the league. And let me throw this at you, get your spin on this. So against righties, Colorado bottom 5 in walk rate, middle of the road in strikeout rate. They're just not, I think, like 84 WRC plus. At home this season, though, they still, I mean, this is still a team, 3rd lowest walk rate in the league, 84 WRC plus, 164 ISO, which is, fine, but not typical Coors Field numbers. 339 WOBA, so that's definitely improved from anywhere outside of Coors. Do you have any interest in getting to Cabrera today?
Yeah, I do. And it doesn't come with confidence. So don't hear that as me saying, like, I think Cabrera is going to pitch great in Coors. But it goes back to what I was saying before. Like, I'm not confident in Brady Singer. Bailey Ober is a good play, but he's getting 20 plus, 20 times the ownership of Cabrera. It seems like a pretty easy way to get a contrarian piece in your lineup without sacrificing upside. You're sacrificing medium projection because he's pitching in Coors Field, but he's got the highest strikeout percentage on the slate at 30% this year. So, when you're thinking in terms of ceiling outcomes, you're not sacrificing anything. He's got better strikeout stuff than anybody. Obviously that isn't, always pitching in Coors, but there's just, it goes back to just there not being much pitching on the slate that I'm going to be comfortable with or confident in. If I want to get to Miami, Edward Cabrera is a pretty easy way to do it with him not getting any ownership, still having good strikeout stuff. There's also a little bit of positive correlation there, which is just, sort of icing on the cake that if Miami's offense does go off, you're probably getting the win from Cabrera. So,
right.
Yeah, like he showed up in like 20% of the lineups I made earlier. Again, that could come down a bit as we get closer to lock, depending on where ownership ends up on some other pieces. But I don't mind. This is the type of slate where I am perfectly fine just rolling the dice and getting to him and hoping for the best. I don't expect it to go well, but I don't really expect most of it to go well for these pitchers.
He has the stuff.
Yeah, without
we
a
know
doubt.
that. Like if just looking at it too, this is not exactly the most imposing lineup. The Colorado Rockies are not the most imposing lineup. I get it; it's in Colorado, but I don't know. If you limit the walks, you go deep enough into the blister, obviously. I'm assuming, with him starting that this is no longer an issue.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only assumption you can make.
Right. If he's starting, you have to assume that that's the case. We have him with the highest leverage score on the slate in the top pitcher tool. And I have no arguments whatsoever. I'm not going to argue with the tools anyway, right? But 1% ownership, we haven't projected for virtually no ownership, 11% top 2 probability on DraftKings.
Yeah, and I mean, keep in mind, he probably is going to come in at like 3 or 4%.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah,
but still low.
Right. Yeah, it's still low. And I mean, if you wanted to dig further into why he's extremely risky, like he does rely on his curveball pretty heavily. He's thrown it 23% of the time to righties this year, 30% to lefties. That's typically a pitch that doesn't play well in Coors.
Doesn't break. Yeah.
Right. So like there's nothing you're looking at here and saying, I think Edward Cabrera is going to do well. You're just simply saying he's just as talented as every pitcher in his price range that's getting ownership. And hopefully things work in my favor.
Yeah. What do you want to do with Rocky? Any other thoughts on bats here before we move on? Any other pitching thoughts?
So, I mean, for the Rockies, if you're not going the Edward Cabrera route, the Rockies are a route that makes sense also. They're getting 1/3 the ownership of Miami. They are essentially half as likely to be the top stack. So they're going under-owned both relative to their top stack percentage and relative to Miami specifically. So I think there's kind of two solid ways you can approach this game from a contrarian standpoint. One is rolling the dice on Cabrera. The other is playing the less popular side of Coors against Cabrera. Neither one of them are probably are projected to be as popular as they should be.
Well, we got 2 games to go here. 2 games? Yeah, 2 games. Tanner Houck, Jaime Barria, Boston, Angels 9.5 total here. Start on either side that you want with pitching. I want to make sure we get through this and get all the information in.
Tanner Houck is more of the same as Edward Cabrera, basically. Totally different in terms of, strikeout upside and all of that. But Tanner Houck right now projected for 4% ownership on DraftKings compared to 17 for Singer, 24 for Ober. He's sandwiched in between them in terms of salary. This is another guy where I don't like the matchup. The Angels have a 4.8 implied run total. It's in a favorable park for hitters. I saw Steven Leibowitz mention it a minute ago. SMP mentioned it this morning. Tanner Houck has ridiculous splits this year, first time through the order versus other times through the order. He's been lights out his first time through, and then is allowing like a 420 WOBA his second and third time through. So it's clearly a risky spot, but is it 5 times as risky as Brady Singer? Like, I don't really think so. So he's another guy that, if you wanted to go that path where like you're playing Marlins bats and you're trying to get a low owned pitcher, but you can't stomach Cabrera, Tanner Houck does the same thing for you. He's decent. He has a lot more issues with left-handed power than right-handed power. The Angels don't have a lot of left-handed power. You have Ohtani, who's the clear one. Jared Walsh is back. He was awful last year, but previously in his career, he's been good. Mickey Moniak's leading off as another left-handed bat. Obviously, Trout, Ohtani, Drury, even though they're right-handed, are still tough outs. So it's another spot where you're not going to be confident, but he's just not getting as much ownership as he probably should. Jaime Barria, more difficult for me to make any sort of a case for.
Okay. Yeah, he's not going to give up a ton of fly balls, 23% strikeout rate, but it's kind of a ho-hum spot for Jaime Barria today. Nothing about him is going to really get you excited.
Yeah. The one thing that stood out about him was how good. So I remember him being reverse splits, I thought, when he first came up. That hasn't been the case anymore. Going back to 2021, 136 expected ISO to righties, 214 to lefties. So far this year in a limited sample, sub 100 to lefties, but even since the start of last year, 208. We don't have a Red Sox lineup yet, but it's likely that you're going to have Verdugo, Yoshida, Devers, Duran, Casas, all from the left side in the top 6 in a good hitter's park. So I actually like getting to the Red Sox here quite a bit.
I wonder why it is. Did he add a change? Is he throwing what?
It could just be me misremembering also.
No, you could be right. I don't know. I was trying to look it up. I couldn't find it on Brooks.
So 2018 to 2019, 263 expected ISO to righties, 157 to lefties. Since then, so since 2020, since 2020, 196 to lefties, 131 to righties. Okay. Not entirely sure what he did.
I wonder if his pitch mix is the same.
Yeah, I was trying to quickly eyeball it and I couldn't tell, but yeah, I don't know. But for a while now, he's been normal splits.
All right. Yeah, we'll revisit that next time you and I talk about Jaime Barria. But for the sake of time, Jordan, are we up against something right after this? Okay. Well, we're going to get out of here. I just wanted to make sure if we go to 6:02, we're good. Okay. Not that I wouldn't do it anyway. Boston bats, Angels bats, both of them coming in right around, 5.5, 6% in the top stack tool. Both of them with middle of the road top stack scores today. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Both of them with Boston's top 3, Angels are 7th in top stack score.
Yeah.
You getting to him?
Yeah. I really like Boston here. We don't have their lineup yet, but we should have 5 lefties in the top 6. The Angels bullpen, as far as lefties go, they have Matt Moore and Tucker Davidson, it looks like. So you're not talking about really lights out lefties out there. Moore's also pitched 3 of the last 4 days. So you probably just have Tucker Davidson as far as lefties that are available. So it sets up as a good spot for Boston. I don't mind getting to the Angels either. I do like that they got the extra lefty in there in Moniak. There is some pinch hit risk. Taylor Ward didn't start this game. So if you do get a left-handed reliever later in the game, or you just get a high leverage situation where Moniak is up, there's a good chance you're going to get Taylor Ward hitting for him. But, 2,600 leading off. And then, obviously Trout, Ohtani, Renfroe, Walsh, Drury, those guys can all do damage. So I like both. I like both offenses. I like the Red Sox side a bit more.
All right, let's get it, man. Luis Castillo. Ownership right now, 63.8%. Granted, top 2 probability is 35%, but let's dig in a little bit. Not dig into, is he a good pitcher? We already know. Just Oakland, not a good team. They strike out an alarming clip. Castillo has a 28% strikeout rate on the season. He's got a swinging strike rate of 14%. I mean, it's the numbers that you're looking for, clearly. Only walking batters at a 5% clip. We know all of that. What do you make of the astronomical ownership coming to Castillo on a 7-game slate? That's what matters most.
I don't think there's a lot I can do about it on DraftKings. Okay. On FanDuel, it becomes more interesting because you only have to roster the one pitcher. So you can just make him Christian Javier or Bailey Ober at 1/6 to 1/10 the ownership, keep the same range of outcomes, and hope that it works out in your favor. On DraftKings, though, it just becomes so tough because if you're not rostering Castillo, it means you have to pick 2 of these other pitchers that don't look very good. Not to say that, you can't. I got him in about 70% of the lineups I made earlier, so I'm getting around the field there. It's just, he's arguably the best pitcher on the slate anyway, in terms of talent. And then he's got hands down the best matchup against Oakland. It is baseball. Chances are Oakland's going to score like 12 runs, but going in, you can't really do anything about it. Like we said earlier, 2.5 implied run total for the A's. They strike out a ton. They can't hit. Castillo is in a good pitcher's park. He's as talented as any pitcher on the slate. Yeah, I'm getting probably 70+%, and I'll find ways to be different somewhere else.
Any interest in Kyle Muller on the other side of this game? I mean,
not really.
Also, you can plus 270 on the money line. Just the win likelihood here is so low.
Right. You can throw him into the mix with Gavin Stone, where it's like he's cheap and not getting any ownership, and I'll just hope to get lucky. I think I'd rather play Stone. Muller has had issues with right-handed power going back to last year when he was with Atlanta. 218 expected ISO to righties. You're getting a Seattle lineup that has Ty France, Julio Rodriguez, Eugenio Suarez, Cal Raleigh, Teoscar Hernandez, AJ Pollock. Their whole lineup is right-handed with the exception of Crawford and Jared Kelenic. But you have guys that really can do damage from the right side. Ty France is pretty cheap as well. So if I'm going the pay down route, I'm getting to Gavin Stone more often. But they are pretty similar plays, just in that they're really cheap. They're not getting any ownership. And then you're just praying that somehow they pitch well.
I know we have some negative leverage on this Seattle stack, but just you and I talking earlier about not just how bad the starters have been, but also the bullpen for Oakland. What's the likelihood that you end up on a decent amount of Seattle bats today?
I don't mind it. It looks like I'm getting like 10 to 20% of their main guys in that crunch I ran earlier, which again is going to change. But Rodriguez looks like one of the best plays on the slate. Ty France is good. Suarez looks like a really good third base play. I think Rafael Devers is probably the best, at least non-cores third base play. Suarez is probably second at 4K. So there are pieces to like from Seattle. It's just a matter of, they are projected to be the second highest owned team. When you look at that individually, though, you get Teoscar Hernandez pulling 21%, Rodriguez pulling 19%, Suarez at 11, Caballero at 10, everybody else sub 10. So you can create Mariner stacks that are somewhat contrarian. Like Teoscar Hernandez is 3,600 on DraftKings, so he's going to be popular. If you stack them with like Jared Kelenic instead of Teoscar Hernandez, obviously it's lefty-lefty, which isn't ideal, but you're contrarian just by doing that.
All right, let's wrap it with this. And I appreciate you guys hanging out. Live before lock for NBA, 7:30 tonight. Make sure to be there for sure. And if you want to sweat bets with us, sweat DFS, and you want to do it for free, our Chalkboard app, link in the description. The app's free. You can sync all your sports books. All the box scores are built into it. We have 2,100 people in there now, and we just kicked it off a couple months ago. So shout out to all you guys who are already in there with us. If you want, and we've had some guys, some members just crushing lately and posting their bets in there before they go off. So it's just made it that much more enjoyable. So if you're one of those people that love sports and like talking to like-minded individuals who enjoy the same shit as you do and talk about it all day and night long, Chalkboard app, free, always, not just free, like always free, forever. All the picks, all the conversation. Check the app out. It's a better version of Discord for sports betting, and we talk a lot of DFS in there as well. Greg Ehrenberg posted some home run picks earlier as well. Josh Engelman's prize pick video in there as well. So check it out. Yeah, Hutch Boy said you guys are missing out if you're not in Chalkboard. Hutch Boy's the one I was talking about. He's crushing lately. Using the tools too, Bet Pro and OddsShopper. But come join us. It's free. If you don't like it, you can bounce. We'll see you over there. But before we go, Adam, top 2 favorite pitchers today or highest exposed, and top 2 stacks for yourself.
Probably. So with the caveat that this can change because I haven't run lineups yet, but probably Castillo, Ober as far as pitching, and Miami, Boston as far as stacks.
All right. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you back here soon. Live before lock at 7:30. Shout out to Jordan Klein. Follow Adam at Chip My Money DFS, me Alafi _D on the Twitters, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. Peace.